Hi, welcome everyone to We Are Triathletes webinar series. Today we are talking about the total triathlete. And with us is Coach Tim Dells of CB Multisport. And he's going to tell us all about how to juggle everything and just kind of put it all together, put all these pieces together that we have. So I'm going to start you off, Coach Tim, with, we were talking about this earlier. We were talking about the swim, the bike, and the run. If you could just give me one tip to get faster on each of those. And I know we just talked about doing a seminar where we would talk about each of these different disciplines and how to get faster on each of them. But for this and to kick this webinar off, could you give us one tip on how to get a little bit faster on the swim, the bike, and the run?
Three tips, one for each sport, right? All right, so we'll start with swimming because obviously that's what comes first. If you are like me and you don't have a swimming background, didn't learn to swim until you were an adult or something like that, swimming can be quite frustrating because it feels like you're not getting any better. The best thing you can do if you haven't done so already is to join a swim group. It doesn't have to be a master's program. It can just be, friends, people in your tri club, anything like that. Because getting in the water with other people, besides the accountability side, because you're meeting them at Tuesday at 6 a.m. or whatever it is, you're going to go to the pool. It also will help keep you from getting discouraged and getting out of the pool to get in the hot tub, which is, way more fun than being in the pool anyway. And it'll also give you someone to chase and people to talk to and to learn from. So in the absence of coaching or a real master's program or something like that, it's great. That's where I started, and that to this point is still the biggest gains I've made have just been joining other people in the water. Cycling, the biggest tip for cycling is ride your bike more. If you can't because you have kids and a job and things like that, then you want to look at a way to be most efficient with your bike. Now that can be, do you have the proper gearing for where you live? Nowadays, most people do, but in the old days when I started, everybody's bike came with gearing like you were a pro cyclist. And so, I spent years just tearing my legs up and going nowhere fast because the bike wasn't geared for me. So make sure that your equipment matches where you live and your ability and things like that. And then for running, the best trick is slow down. Most people run way too hard all the time. And it really is a killer. It takes forever to recover from, and you don't run hard enough to get the anaerobic and strength and muscular gains, but you're running way too way too hard to be working on your aerobic engine. So run 80 to 90% of what you have been running in terms of effort level, and you'll start to see better gains and faster recovery.
Awesome. All right. So we've got the swim, we've got the bike, we've got the run. Now, besides those three sports, what's the most important piece of the triathlon puzzle that we should focus on?
Recovery. Triathlon it's three sports, right? We got bike, run. We're training for three sports where most people train for one. So we're trying to cram everything into the time that we have available, right? Because we work 40 to 80 hours a week, and you have your kids' sports functions, and you have your PTAs and whatever else it is. So when you have free time, you're trying to cram in a workout. And that's great in theory, except most of us are sleep deprived, right? Because we get up at 4 or 4:15 so that we can go to the gym before work and swim. And then after work, we get a workout in, and then we eat dinner at 9, and then you're laying, watch TV and wind down, go to bed. So you're getting, 5-6 hours of sleep, and you're doing that day after day. And it really just adds the fatigue, it raises your level of fatigue. So focus on recovery. Like pro triathletes train 20 to 30 hours a week, but they go home and take a nap after each workout. And they sit on the couch in their Normatec boots and they answer their emails and they do their sponsor. They don't run around and do the things that you have to do when you have a normal job and a normal life. So they can do it. 10 hours, 8 to 10 hours is a lot of time to train if you're a normal person. And you can do a lot in 8 to 10 hours and still give yourself time to have a life and time to recover and to relax and sit on the couch and have a glass of wine and wind down in the evening. Or, and if you're tired one day and you're exhausted, don't do your workout. If you're supposed to run and you're dragging yourself out of bed, but you're going to feel guilty because you're not going to check your box for the day of your workout, you go for a walk. Just go for a nice walk around the local path or the park or whatever. It gets you on your feet. It keeps you moving, but it also allows you to recover.
That's great. You're right. There is very little recovery time, right? Because we're like doing something every single day.
Yep. There's always.
And I think the hardest thing is getting good at all three disciplines. Like, how do you actually get good at all three? It's like I feel like you're so limited every day. And if you don't have more than a couple of hours a day to work out, how do you do it?
So the truth is you have to, we get into this habit of comparing ourselves with other people. And because it's a results-based sport, and there's rankings at the end of the race, and there's people on podiums getting awards, and so it's natural to compare yourself to that. The first thing you should stop doing is don't compare what you do on a bike to a cyclist, and don't compare what you do pool to someone who's been swimming their whole life. They're not the same. In triathlon, I'm considered to be a cyclist. And I'm a decent cyclist in triathlon. If I go and ride with my local cycling team, I'm the slowest guy in the group, and they drag me around. But they ride their bikes 300 miles a week, and that's all they do is ride. Where I'm spending 15 to 20 hours training for 3 sports, they're spending 12 hours training for 1. Mm-hmm. And so it's the same thing across all 3 sports. So the first thing you do is you've got to temper the expectation. You can't expect to be that person. There's a saying in triathlon, kind of a funny thing is, why be bad at one sport when you can be bad at 3? Because that's the way the training sets up. The truth is you don't have to be an excellent athlete to be a good triathlete. You just have to be consistent. Whatever your time allows, if you are consistently using that time to train and not to overtrain, then you'll see the most improvement. It's a cumulative sport. You really don't start to see your peaks until you've done 5 to 7 years of consistent training. And so you just have to put in time, and it has to be smart time. If you only have 8 hours, that's fine, but let's make the most of those 8 hours. That doesn't mean go and train hard for all 8 hours, but we need to do those 8 hours properly. If you're going into the pool, don't waste the workout. Have a reason that you're going to the pool. Don't use junk miles and junk volume if your time is limited. Make sure that there's a purpose to your workouts.
So how important do you think strength training is at this point? I mean, should we be just strength training during off season, or should we incorporate it into our daily routines?
So strength training is very beneficial. It's also the first thing that gets thrown out the window because you're not, you don't have to lift weights in T2, right? You're going out to run. So it's always the first thing to go. In the winter time, in the off season, I do take volume out of my athletes' training plans and put more strength training in. And there's a bunch of reasons. Strength training is great for preventing injuries. It corrects imbalances. You know, you do get muscle growth, which makes you stronger and more powerful, able to swim, bike, and run faster. But its best benefits are it helps prevent injury and corrects any imbalances, you know, because everybody's got some. That said, if you can do it in the season, it's great. Now, you obviously don't want to really lift anything, do heavy lifting because of the amount of fatigue that it causes. But even if it's just body weight stuff, you know, anything you can do for core and stability is huge because we use that for everything. You're faster in the pool if you have a good core because it keeps your legs and your hips up, right? So it makes you in a straighter line. In the bike, if you're supposed to support yourself with your core when you ride a bike and not with your arms. You're not supposed to put your weight on your arms or on your hands if you're riding a road bike. You're supposed to support yourself with your core. A strong core keeps the hands from going numb. It keeps the shoulders and the lower back and the neck from hurting, and allows you to get off the bike feeling much less fatigued. Running wise, the core controls your hips. You don't want to have hips that are, you don't want your hips to be dropping with every step because you're doing this and you're tired. Your hips keep you on a flat plane and they keep your form correct and moving forward. So if there's only one thing that you can make time for, put a 20-minute core routine in. It goes a long way. So if you can do it, it's great.
How important is race week hydration and nutrition?
Huge. I have a couple Facebook groups around some different races in the area. And we have a race coming up this weekend called Eagle Man. It's a half Ironman. It's on the Eastern Shore in Maryland. It is notoriously a hot race. It's like running on the surface of the sun. It's really bad. Most people think that hydration during race week means chugging a bunch of water Thursday, Friday, Saturday to get ready. And all that does is make you pee a lot and does nothing to help your muscles. And it also, it flushes the electrolytes and the sodium and the things out of your blood. It dilutes you, which makes you more likely to cramp, and it makes you more likely to dehydrate, and it makes your body more likely to shut down. It's like the myth of carb loading the day before a race makes a huge difference. Going and eating a big bowl of pasta the night before a race is not going to help you. It's just going to make you heavier on race day. Versus eating an extra piece or two of fruit every day during the week leading up to the race. You're getting the same sugars and the same type of carbs, but it's better carbs and better sugars, and you're topping off your levels. Fluids work the same way. I'm racing Sunday. My fluid increase starts today. And for me, that means, we all tend to drink a lot of water already. That's because most of us walk around with our bottle at work or our jug at the, whatever. So I don't increase the volume much, maybe, 40 ounces, so, 20 to 30 to 40 ounces, but I change what I'm drinking. Instead of drinking just water, I drink something that has electrolytes and vitamins and sodium. So I'm a big Infinite guy. Infinite has a hydrate, it's lower calorie, but it has the good stuff in it. I know a lot of people that use Gatorade G2, low calorie. I have one guy who actually takes G2 and he basically cuts the bottle into 2 servings and he does a half water, half G2 because it's still a little sweet. Powerade Zero, Scratch Nutrition, they make one. All of those are good because they're low in the calorie content. There's your drink, but they're high in amino acids and the electrolytes and the sodium and the things that our body is gonna call on race day.
It's interesting. To me, that's the one thing, even during the race, I think we sometimes let go, is the nutrition and the hydration. So they say, and I don't know if you agree, that every 45 minutes you should have 100 calories.
That's actually low. Everybody's different. right? It all depends on your size, you know, your weight and how hard you're working and things like that. The general accepted rule of thumb is 250 to 350 calories an hour, which is at least double, you know, of what that's now. The body can usually process no more than 350 to 400 an hour. So anything beyond that, it's just kind of waste. But it also depends. Like if I was doing short course, Olympic or a sprint, I'm not taking any calories at all because the race is short. You know, if I'm doing a half Ironman or an Ironman, then absolutely. But the things we run into is the biggest one is when you're running, it's really hard to eat when you run, right? You're tired and you're bouncing around and your stomach's usually kind of a jumbled little mess, right? And so it's hard to eat. On the bike, which is when it is the most efficient time to eat, people forget to eat, right? So when I used to eat solid foods, I would actually set a timer on my watch. And my watch would beep every 30 minutes and I'd say, oh, got to eat half of this bar or, you know, whatever it was I had. Switching to liquid nutrition changed the whole game for me because I always remember to drink. So when I switched to Infinite, if I drink a bottle an hour, I get 319 calories an hour. And I don't have to fumble with anything. You know, I don't have to undo a package. I don't have to bag. I take my drink and I put it back and I'm getting my calories in. And the longer the race gets, the more important it becomes because we can't replace what we burn. I burn about 1,000 calories an hour, whether I'm running or cycling. There's no way that I can get all that in, which is why we want to start with a full tank. You know, and we're topping off race week. We're doing the fluids and getting the extra carbs through fruits and things like that. So that we're starting with our tank on full and not on E. But if you get behind on taking it in on the race, it's almost impossible to come back from it. So you should always think about your race as the portion is about getting fluids and nutrition in for the run. Because you're not going to be able to eat when you run, especially when you become tired. When you eat, you need blood in your stomach to digest food. When you're tired, all the blood goes to your muscles and there's none in your stomach. So it's not physically possible to break it down. So while you're on the ride and you're comfortable and you're in a set position and you're not bouncing around a whole bunch, that's when you should be focusing on your fluid and your foods.
So let's talk a little, we're going to switch gears a little bit and talk about how to balance triathlon with everything that you have in your life. You know, I mean, you know, I think that we all jump and sign up for these races and then realize, I don't know if I could actually devote the time to do these, you know, to do these races. So how do you do it?
Sure. The first thing is to set a realistic expectation, right? There's this misnomer in the sport of triathlon that Ironman is everything, right? Have you go, you meet to a tri club, you meet somebody new. Have you ever done an Ironman, right? That's usually the first question that comes out. Now, right now, I'm a bad example of that. I'm wearing an Ironman Maryland hat. I do work for Ironman, and this is my favorite race on the planet, so forgive me for that. Or second favorite race, but Ironman is not the be-all, end-all. I'm doing Ironman Maryland this year. I haven't towed the line in an Ironman for 4 years. And this is, you know, coaching and racing is my living. But it doesn't have to be Ironman. So you should set your race goals based around your life. If you know that you only have 6 to 8 hours a week that you can train, then you should be looking for a race that isn't going to take you any more than 6 to 8 hours. So you could do a half Ironman, right? The amount of time that you can contribute during the weekend training is the amount of time that you can race, is a good rule of thumb. So if you can contribute 12 to 17 hours, you can train for an Ironman. If you can only give yourself 3 or 4, then you can do an Olympic, right? Or under, like, use that as a good rule of thumb. The other thing to remember is that this is a hobby and it needs to be fun. Don't get caught up in the fact that you can get your workout in today because you had to work late. You don't have to check all the boxes. When I build a training plan, I tell my athletes, if you can do 80%, you're going to be ready. Right? So people miss workouts. It happens. I missed one last week and I had to cut one short. And, you know, and I was in a prep week for a big race. It happens. So don't ever hold your feet to the fire. You know, you want to be motivated and you want to be, you know, self-confident in doing it, but it's not the end all if you can't get it in. So as long as you remember that it's your hobby and not your life, then you can have a lot of fun with it.
That's a good piece of advice. I think we all get very wrapped up. You know, we're all type A personalities. We all want to just do the best we can do and try to get everything in. And how do you do it? You sometimes you think to yourself, well, why am I doing this? You know, what is this going to actually do for me? You know?
Yeah, I have people that get up at 3 a.m. because they got to get their training in before, like I have a married couple and I train her, the wife, and the husband is a friend of mine. And she gets up at 3 a.m. to get her workout in, and he's a little later riser. So he gets up and gets the kids ready for school. They go to school. After work and school, she handles the kids' activities and he goes and trains. And that's the life balance that works for them, you know, but it's what you have to figure out what works for you and what is not going to, you have to enjoy it and still be able to live your life. Otherwise you're not helping yourself.
So not doing a 70.3 or an Ironman is okay?
Oh, absolutely. Like I said, I haven't towed the line in an Ironman in 4 years. Beach to Battleship 2015 was the last time. And I went into that race injured and had a terrible day. I usually try to do a half a year, but for me, it's a good distance. And I like the distance. It doesn't matter. I can tell you that I'm more exhausted after an Olympic than I am after an Ironman. You know, and sprints are, you don't have to change anything in your life to prepare for a sprint. You know, you make the time to train, but you don't have to pass on your yard work so that you can go run, or get somebody to watch the kids so that you can go do this. There's no, you don't have to go longer to consider yourself more successful. As long as you're giving yourself the best of yourself when you're training, no matter what that means in terms of speed or time or the distance of the race, then that's good enough. We're not making money doing this. They're not paying us to show up on race day. So do what you're going to enjoy doing.
So I have a question from someone in the group. If you have 2 workouts scheduled in a day, say you have a swim and a cycle, should you split them up so that you do one in the morning and one at night? Or should you be doing them both in the morning or both at night? Or does it really matter as you get older? I don't know what older means out of that.
So it really depends. For most people during the week, you have to split them up because they have to go to work or they have something else to do. And for most people, the swimming tends to be the easiest one in the morning because it usually takes less time and your pool is on the way to your office or your job site, you know, your gym or whatever. So I don't suggest that if you have, say, 3 days in a row where you have 2 workouts, don't put them together as a brick all 3 days, because a brick workout raises the level of fatigue. So it increases the time of recovery. It's important to do them because you need to know how your body's going to react when you just slam 0.9 miles and then you have to get on the bike. Well, that's a totally different feeling than getting on a bike fresh. You know, your shoulders are tight, your neck's tight, your back's a little tight, you know, your heart rate's already high. So they're good to experience, but you shouldn't be stacking them all the time because it really raises fatigue. It really raises the chance of injury. I mean, I do 1, maybe 2 times a week where I will brick. Usually it's after my long ride because it's the most convenient to run afterwards. And it's a good situation of race day. And then 1 in the middle of the week, and that one varies. As you get older, everything changes because we don't recover the same at 40 as we do at 20. You know, at 20, everybody remembers being 20, 25 and being out late, hanging out with your friends and doing all this stuff early the next morning and just rocking and rolling, right? And now, like, if I get into bed at 10 o'clock, I'm like getting into bed at 10, and I know I'm going to be dragging when my alarm goes off in the morning. As you get older, recovery becomes the most important tool in your toolbox. And that means setting out your workouts. Maybe you can't do 2 intense rides a week. You can only do 1. Or instead of 3 swims a week, you can only get 2 in because you need that time to recover. Recovery is the biggest tool the older that we get. And it really becomes noticeable when you get to about 40. That's when recovery and strength training becomes super important. You know, we start losing, you know, your testosterone and you know, estrogen, you know, things start going down and muscle starts deteriorating and it's harder to keep up with. So it's really easy to become overtrained the older we get.
Can you reiterate a little bit about how many times a week you should do each of these disciplines? And also, should you practice nutrition and hydration?
Sure. The amount of times that we train is dependent on the amount of time that we have in the sport, you know, and the distance that you're training for. I have a schedule that allows me to train more. So I'm usually in the pool 3 days a week. I should be in the pool 4, but I can't. I just can't pull that off. I ride 3 to 4 days a week and I run 4 or 5 days a week. But that's because my schedule allows it. You should be trying to do at least 2 of each. That's enough to gain the aerobic benefit and to gain the muscle memory. The more we can contribute, the more times we can do it, the better, as long as, you know, you're not overloading yourself. But at least 2. Most people tend to drop swimming first because you have to get changed, you have to drive to the pool, you have to shower afterwards, whatever. And you say, well, it's the shortest leg of the race. So if I'm going to toss something, I'm going to toss that out and run more. And on its surface, that sounds fine. If you come from a running background, you should be throwing away that run and going to the pool because you don't want to get on the bike tired and you already know how to run. You know, the running will come to you when you need it to. So if you're limited in the amount of times you can train, you should focus on your weakness and not your strength. The strength is more fun to train. It's more enjoyable, but it's also the least efficient way to train. So that's important. As far as nutrition and hydration, most people are terrible at this, myself included. But you should train the way that you're going to race. Now, that doesn't mean the intensity should be as high when you're training, right? You want to save those matches for race day. But if you're going out for a long ride, yeah, you should be practicing your nutrition and hydration as you would on race day, because it makes it normal and it makes it to where you don't have to think about it. If you're drinking every time your watch beeps at 5 miles in training, then when your watch beeps at 5 miles on race day, you're going to take the drink. So practice the way that you plan to race it, because the less stuff we think about on race day, usually the better the day goes.
I'm just going to unmute everybody real quick and just see if there's anybody who has any questions before we wrap this up.
Ah, a strange silence.
All right. So without further ado, then I will thank Coach Tim for his time today in educating us as always. And again, we're going to be doing this series of swim, bike, run within the next couple of weeks so that everybody's all prepared for the fall or the end of summer and really, you know, can get to the next level before their next race. Coach Tim, before we close, can you just give us your contact information?
Sure. If you want to send me an email, you can reach me at coachtim@cbmultisport.com. That's usually the easiest way to get to me. You can find me on Facebook through either my name, Tim Dels, or there's a CB Multisport page that you can message me through there. I'm in the We Are Triathletes page and group, so you can find me there if you need. I'm on Instagram as CB Multisport. I'm on Twitter as CB Multisport. You know, all the social medias we have to hang out on nowadays. And I'll be happy to answer any questions. You guys can always bring questions. I tell people there's no cost to information. We all have lots of questions. I always had lots of questions, and I still do. And so it's always good to have people that you can take those to. So please feel free to ask any questions that you guys have, or ask them on the forum, you know, on the We Are Triathletes page, and I'll answer them there, whatever is easiest for you guys.
Thank you. Thank you again. You were terrific as always, and I appreciate your time. And without further ado, I wish you the best of luck this weekend at Eagleman, and for all your athletes and everyone else. Have a great training week, and we'll see you next time.
Thanks. Bye, everybody.